It all started on the morning of my birthday and it should have been a great day. I had no crazy expectations, just a warm morning with my wife, maybe breakfast together, a joke about getting older. Lena usually made a thing out of it. One year, she filled our bedroom with helium balloons. Another year, she faked forgetting and then surprised me with a barbecue in the backyard, friends and neighbors all gathered. I wasn't asking for fireworks, just her. Just us. Instead, I woke up alone. Her side of the bed was cold, made like it hadn't even been slept in. At first, I thought maybe she got up early to grab pastries or coffee, something simple and sweet. But the house was dead quiet. Not a single sound. No coffee brewing, no shower running, not even her usual morning playlist humming from the Bluetooth speaker. I walked into the kitchen with sleep still in my eyes and found only an envelope waiting for me on the counter. There was no card inside. Just a gym membership brochure and a sticky note stuck to it that read, "Make a man out of yourself already." I stared at it for a long second, thinking maybe I was reading it wrong or maybe there was a joke I wasn't getting. Lena had a way of poking fun that sometimes straddled the line between playful and passive-aggressive. I let out a dry chuckle, tried to pretend it didn't sting. But something about the handwriting, rushed, sharp, not her usual neat curls, made my stomach twist a little. It didn't feel like a birthday message. It felt like an ultimatum. I poured myself a glass of water and stood there in the kitchen, trying to convince myself that I was just tired, overly sensitive, maybe even imagining things. But then I heard the unmistakable sound of tires rolling into the driveway. I stepped toward the window, still barefoot, and pushed the blinds aside just in time to see a sleek black Lexus ease to a stop. And then the passenger door opened. Lena stepped out. She didn't see me watching. She was too busy adjusting her hair in the side mirror and smoothing down her coat. Her walk toward the front door was brisk, but not rushed. She looked composed, too composed for someone who'd supposedly just rolled out of a long night at the office. And Marcus was in the driver's seat. That was the moment everything shifted. I had met Marcus a few times before, tall, always sharply dressed, with the kind of confidence that filled every room. He was the creative director at Lena's marketing firm, and she always spoke about him with this mix of admiration and annoyance, like he pushed her too hard but also inspired her. She used to call him a genius with the emotional range of a brick. Funny how nicknames turned to excuses. Marcus didn't even try to park around the corner or drop her off at the end of the street like someone hiding something. He just sat there in our driveway in plain view. Lena didn't look back at him as she walked up to the door. She didn't need to. When she stepped inside, she blinked like she was surprised to see me standing there. "Oh," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Didn't think you'd be up this early?" I glanced at the clock. "It's 7:14. "Yeah, I guess I lost track of time." She tried to pass me and head toward the hallway, but I didn't move. "Where were you coming from?" She didn't even blink. "The office. We had a late-night brainstorming session. Marcus and I crashed there. Didn't think it was worth the drive back and forth?" I nodded slowly, but inside, something snapped. Her blouse was wrinkled, creased in ways that didn't match sitting at a desk. Her eyeliner had smudged just enough to look fixed, not fresh. She didn't smell like her usual citrus perfume. It was something heavier, muskier, and on the left side of her neck, half tucked beneath her collar, was a faint red mark, small, oval-shaped, and definitely not from a pillow. When my eyes landed on it, she followed my gaze. For a split second, her posture tensed. But then she rolled her eyes. "Oh my God," she scoffed. "You think that's seriously? That's probably from the seatbelt or something." "Seatbelt," I repeated, my voice flat. "You're being paranoid, babe." She gave me that half-laugh she always used when trying to shut down an uncomfortable topic. "God, you're jealous over a wrinkle?" "No," I said. "Over a birthmark that wasn't there yesterday." She tilted her head and let out a breath like I was the one being ridiculous. "Wow. Happy birthday, I guess," she said. "You know what? I don't have time for this." She brushed past me and headed straight to the bedroom. A few minutes later, she came out again, dressed for work in a different outfit, her face freshly powdered, lips a shade darker. She didn't offer an apology. Didn't even circle back to what had just happened. She grabbed her keys, muttered something about being late for a client pitch, and walked out the door like it was just another Tuesday. I didn't say anything. I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at the empty doorway, feeling like the floor had shifted under me. The gym card was still sitting on the counter, its blue plastic catching the morning light. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, being told to make a man out of myself when I'd spent the last 5 years building everything around her, our house, our life, our family routines. I made space so she could rise. Took over school pickups and weekend errands. Let her chase her career goals. And now, on the one day I thought maybe she'd pause to see me, I woke up to an insult and the sound of her being dropped off by a man who wore $600 cologne. That day, I called in sick. Told my boss I had food poisoning, which wasn't that far from the truth. I felt sick, all right. Not the kind that sends you running to a bathroom, but the kind that sits in your chest, heavy and tight. I spent most of that morning just thinking. Not doing. Not reacting. Just thinking. And I kept coming back to one question I couldn't shake. When did I stop being enough for her? I didn't get an answer that day. But I did start to remember things I had chosen to forget. Things I had brushed off in the name of trust, of faith, of giving her space. That morning didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of 1,000 little moments. Missed signals. Withheld truths. Maybe even deliberate blind spots. But that gym card? That wasn't just a birthday gift. It was a warning. A line drawn in Sharpie on a relationship already fading at the edges. And suddenly I realized I had a choice. I could keep pretending this was normal. Or I could start looking for the truth. That night, after Lena left for work, I sat in the living room, phone in hand, but didn't call anyone. Not my brother, not my best friend, not even my mom who always somehow knew when something was off with me. I just sat there staring at the TV screen, watching a show I couldn't even name. My mind wasn't in the room. It was retracing a path I'd been too blind or maybe too scared to walk before. Once the silence settled, memory took over. It's funny how many red flags can blend in when you're not ready to admit they're there. At first, they came in small, almost polite forms. Like Lena sighing at dinner when I talked about work, calling it predictable or safe. She used to love hearing about my engineering projects, how I figured out a cleaner circuit path or finally debugged some stubborn firmware. But somewhere in the last year, her eyes stopped lighting up when I spoke. One night, she flat out said it. "You're always going to be this, huh?" I didn't ask what this meant. I didn't want to know. Then there were the family weekends. We used to load the car with snacks, put Ben and Ellie in the back, and hit the lake or the hiking trails nearby. Lena used to be the one who planned those trips. Now, she always had a reason to stay behind. "Marcus needs me to review something. There's a late event with the agency's new clients. It's better for the kids if I stay caught up at work." The first time she missed Ben's soccer game, he looked up at the bleachers 3 times before asking me if Mom had the wrong time. I lied. Told him she was probably caught in traffic. But she never even called that day. Then it happened again. And again. The rehearsals. Ellie's recital. Her birthday. When I turned down the relocation opportunity to Seattle, a higher position, more money, better schools, I did it for us. Lena called it a mistake. Said I was choosing mediocrity. I thought she was overwhelmed. Maybe scared of the change. But what she was really saying was, "You're in my way." She started dressing differently. Not in a bad way, just noticeably. Tighter skirts. High heels she used to reserve for weddings or our rare date nights. She started wearing lipstick again. And perfume. New perfume. I remember asking her if she changed brands. "It's from a client gift basket," she said, waving her hand like it didn't matter. "Smells expensive, doesn't it?" She never used to care about labels. At dinners, she'd sit scrolling on her phone, half laughing at texts, then locking the screen when I leaned over. Once I asked, "Work stuff?" She smirked. "No, Marcus is just blowing off steam. His wife doesn't get him." That name again. Marcus. I didn't think much of it then. I mean, she worked with the guy. Of course she'd mention him. But soon, his name came up in every conversation like some soundtrack that never quite faded to silence. He was the only one who understood how much pressure she was under. The only one who gave her creative freedom. The reason she didn't quit. I told myself I was being paranoid. Insecure. She was climbing the ladder. Maybe I should be proud. Supportive. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Especially when she'd start comparing us, not outright, but in these small, surgical cuts. "Marcus says you don't scale until you take risks." Marcus's wife is a total homebody, but at least she doesn't hold him back. "Marcus is going to Cannes next month. Can you imagine?" Yes. I could imagine. I could imagine a lot more than that. She started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. Her screen time doubled, then tripled. I only noticed because Ellie picked up my phone one day and said, "Mommy has more hours than you," and giggled. I smiled for her, but inside I felt this heavy drop in my chest. The kind you get when you realize your gut's been right all along. Sometimes she came home past midnight, reeking of cologne and cheap champagne. She'd kiss my forehead and collapse into bed, muttering something about long meetings and just 2 drinks. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I wanted so badly to hold on to the version of her that used to fall asleep with her head on my chest, whispering dreams about opening a boutique or traveling with the kids through Europe. But that version was long gone, replaced with this distant, distracted person who spent more time curating Instagram stories than living anything real. And that's the other thing, our life disappeared from her feed. There used to be pictures of the kids. Us. Our vacations, our Sunday brunches, her birthday flowers. Now it was filtered photos of rooftop lounges, trendy art events, Marcus's agency dinners, glasses of wine against blurry skylines. No Ben. No Ellie. No me. At first, I told myself I didn't care. It's just social media. But it wasn't. It was a highlight reel of a life I wasn't in. And it hurt. One night, I asked her if she wanted to plan a family trip. Just the four of us. She barely looked up from her laptop and said, "I don't have time for that kind of fantasy right now." Fantasy. That word stuck with me longer than it should have. By now, I was no longer denying it. I knew I was losing her. She was slowly fading into another world, one where I was a relic, a comfort she'd outgrown. But I kept pretending. Because that's what you do when you love someone who's already halfway out the door. You beg them with silence. You make peace with being invisible. Until you can't anymore. That morning, my birthday morning, I saw it all for what it was. The trail I'd ignored. The signs I'd rewritten into something more comfortable. The little lies I told myself to keep our world from crumbling. But the truth is, it had been crumbling for a long time. I had just refused to open my eyes. And now that I had, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unknow what I'd seen on her neck. I couldn't forget the sound of that car, Marcus's car, pulling away like it belonged there. I couldn't unread the note she left me like I was some broken project that needed fixing. Something inside me shifted that day, not with fire, not with rage. It was colder than that. Like standing in a room after everyone's gone and realizing you were the only one who didn't know the party was over. I knew I wasn't going to ask her again. Not about where she was going. Not about who she was with. Because I already knew the answer. Now, I just needed the proof. And after that, I'd need a plan. I waited 2 more weeks before I did anything. Not because I was still unsure, no, I was sure. But I needed time. Time to breathe. Time to think. Time to figure out if I was reacting or responding. There's a difference, and I knew that if I made a move too soon, she'd twist it, spin it into paranoia, jealousy, insecurity. That's how it always worked. Lena did the talking and I did the apologizing. But not this time. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. When she said she had a late pitch meeting, I wrote down the time she left and the time she returned. When she said she was meeting clients for drinks, I noted the place she mentioned. I logged everything, not obsessively, not angrily. Just quietly. Like a man preparing a case he never wanted to present. And then I called in a favor. A guy I went to college with, Nathan, worked in private security. Mostly corporate stuff, but he knew people. I didn't give him details at first. Just told him I needed to confirm something about my wife and her boss. He didn't flinch. You want surveillance or evidence? Both. He gave me a number. Discreet, efficient, expensive. Make sure you want to know, he told me before hanging up. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. I already had. The investigator's name was Tom, a guy in his mid-50s with graying temples and a voice like gravel. He didn't waste time with sympathy or small talk. Give me names, vehicles, routines. I gave him everything. Lena's schedule. Marcus's car. The nights she usually came home late. Her favorite lipstick. Her new perfume. The fact that she always wore heels on Thursdays even though her firm claimed they went casual toward the end of the week. Tom took it all in and nodded. We'll start tonight. He didn't say much else. Just left. And I went back inside and waited. Took 3 days. Just 3. On the 4th morning, I opened my front door to find a small padded envelope resting on the welcome mat. No return address. My name was scrawled across the front in thick marker. Inside, a USB drive and a neatly folded sheet of paper. The note read, Wednesday, Hilton Garden Inn, exit 22 off I-75. Check-in, 9:47 p.m. Check-out, 6:58 a.m. Marcus drove. She kissed him before they entered. I closed the door, sat on the couch, and plugged the USB into my laptop. And there it was, clear as daylight. Video clips and high-resolution photos taken from across the street, time-stamped and silent, but loud enough to shake everything I still had left inside. Lena and Marcus pulling up to the side entrance. Her stepping out of the car in a short black dress I'd never seen before. Him placing his hand on the small of her back like he'd done it 1,000 times. Her turning, laughing, tilting her face toward his like a woman leaning into home. And then they disappeared into the lobby. They didn't leave until sunrise. I stared at the screen for a long time, expecting to feel something explode. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal. But all I felt was a strange stillness, like everything had just fallen into place. The missing piece of the puzzle wasn't missing anymore. It had been right there, in plain sight, waiting for me to accept it. There was no need to confront her. I didn't storm into the bedroom. I didn't slam doors or throw things. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just saved the files, backed them up, and closed the laptop. She came home that night at 8:42 p.m., humming to herself like it was any other day. Said she had a K*lar headache, and asked if we had any ibuprofen. I pointed her toward the cabinet without looking up from my plate. "Oh," she said. "You're eating already?" "Yeah. I didn't think you were coming home for dinner." She hesitated, then let it drop. The next morning, I reviewed the investigator's full report. There were more entries, more meetings, more lies. Dinner charges to her personal card, steakhouses, wine bars, trendy restaurants I'd never heard of. Appointments at salons she never mentioned. Hotel stays billed under private conference booking. All paid for by her, not the company. She wasn't even trying to hide it from her bank. Just from me. I checked our shared credit history. Nothing had been posted there. She kept it all separate, segregated. Like I was already excluded from her life. I just hadn't gotten the memo. I didn't react. I documented. I scanned everything, photos, receipts, timestamps, car logs, and uploaded them to a secure cloud folder. Gave it a name I'd remember without giving it away. Plan B. When Lena left the next Friday for another agency dinner, I followed her. Not directly. I waited 20 minutes, then got in my car and drove. The address the investigator had marked was easy to find. This time it wasn't a hotel. It was a rooftop bar 2 counties over. One of those places with $20 cocktails and string lights. I didn't go in. I didn't have to. I watched from the parking lot, far enough to be invisible, close enough to see. They were on the terrace. She wore the red dress I bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. The one she claimed didn't fit anymore. Fit fine. He held her hand across the table. She didn't pull away. They looked like a couple on vacation. Smiling. Free. Unbothered. I left after 20 minutes. That was enough. Back home, I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the sink, staring into nothing. The images wouldn't stop. Her laugh. The tilt of her chin. The way she looked at him like he was a promise and I was a burden. But still, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because the part of me that would have cried was already gone. That night, I lay in bed next to her as she slept beside me, curled toward the wall, phone face down on the nightstand. I looked at her, at the woman I once swore to love no matter what, and all I could think was, she's already gone. She just didn't have the courage to say it out loud. So I decided I would. But not yet. First, I'd make sure I had everything I needed. Then, when the time was right, I'd say it in a way she couldn't ignore. Not with yelling. Not with tears. With facts. With truth. With silence sharp enough to be louder than anything she'd ever said to me. Once I had the proof, it changed everything. Not just how I saw her, but how I saw myself. For the first time in a long time, I stopped reacting to Lena and started thinking for myself again. My world had been orbiting hers for so long that I didn't realize how much I'd abandoned my own gravity. But now I had clarity. Cold, sobering clarity. I didn't confront her. I didn't want tears. I didn't want denial. I didn't want the version of Lena who could cry on cue, spin guilt into a sob story, and make me question whether the wound was hers or mine. No, I was past that now. I didn't want justice. I wanted preparation. I started with the patents. 3 of them, actually, small modular sensor technologies I'd developed over the years during my time in research. They'd been sitting dormant, technically owned by me, and used. I hadn't pushed them out because life was stable, and I thought stability mattered more than ambition. Lena always used to joke that I was playing it too safe, that I could do more if I actually believed in myself. She was probably right. But now, those shelved ideas became something else. Leverage. I reached out to a mid-sized Colorado firm that specialized in manufacturing tech for automation systems. Within 2 weeks, after some NDA-covered discussions and contract rewrites, they made an offer. High 7 figures. I didn't blink. I accepted. Over $4 million wired into a holding account I created under a newly incorporated LLC, under a name Lena wouldn't recognize. I hired a financial planner, transferred liquid assets, set up trust funds, separate accounts. All legal, all clean. I didn't touch the joint account, didn't raise alarms. This wasn't revenge. It was reinforcement. And then, I started quietly investing in the company Marcus worked for. He wasn't the owner, just a high-level creative lead, but the agency was public, and with some creative maneuvering, I began acquiring stock through that same LLC. Not enough to control anything, but enough to be in the room when it mattered. I knew his name. I knew his record. I knew what his ego looked like on paper. Let's just say, I didn't buy shares to be passive. At home, I played my part. I smiled when Lena walked through the door, laughed at her stories when she bothered to share them. I cooked dinner. I helped Ellie with her science project on constellations and made it to every single one of Ben's Saturday practices. The kids deserved that much, deserved normalcy, even if the foundation underneath them was cracked. Maybe especially because of it. I documented everything, not just the affair. Tom had already covered that, but Lena's neglect. Her absences from parent-teacher conferences, missed birthdays, school functions. The nights she forgot dinner was even a thing. The weekends she told us she had to work, but posted Instagram stories of mimosa brunches in boutique lounges. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I knew what was coming. I knew that when this broke, she wasn't going to go quietly. Lena never did. So I saved *TS, collected statements from teachers, spoke to Ellie's counselor, just casually, about some things I'd noticed lately. I didn't accuse. I observed. The counselor noted changes. So did Ellie's teacher, who said Ellie had been quieter, missing her mom, and even mentioned it during a reading circle. That crushed me more than anything. Not the hotel. Not the red dress. Not Marcus's hand on her hip. It was hearing Ellie's voice in my head, whispering, "I miss the mom who used to dance with me." I didn't know when that version of Lena disappeared, but I knew she wasn't coming back. At night, I'd tuck the kids in and sit out on the porch with a notebook. Not for journaling, planning. Timelines, asset lists, key dates. My lawyer, Sarah, said the more organized I was, the less mess we'd face later. I hired her quietly on retainer, long before Lena suspected anything. Sarah was smart, ruthless in court, but compassionate with me. She didn't treat me like a statistic. She treated me like a man trying to protect what mattered. "You're not doing this out of anger," she said during our first consultation. "You're doing this out of necessity. And that makes you dangerous, in a good way." It didn't feel good, but it felt right. A few weeks later, Lena came home on a Tuesday night with takeout and a story about a new campaign she was heading up. She barely made eye contact. Her phone lit up on the table next to her, and I saw a name flash. M. She didn't pick up, just flipped it over, grabbed her chopsticks, and launched into something about market saturation. I nodded, smiled. Inside, I was counting down, because I knew something she didn't. I had control now, not of her, not of Marcus, not even of how this would end, but of me. And that was enough. The day I filed for divorce, the sky was clear. I remember that detail because Lena always said big decisions happen on stormy days. "Rain makes you think twice," she once told me. But that morning the sun was out. There was no hesitation in me, just quiet resolve. The papers were already signed. Sarah had everything ready. A full packet complete with the evidence we'd compiled, photos from the investigator, receipts, *TS of Lena's posts showing her at bars during meetings, school reports noting her absences from the kids' lives. All neatly indexed, tabbed, and submitted to the court. I didn't give Lena the papers in person. Sarah served them through her office just after noon. I was at home with the kids when it happened. Ellie was coloring in the dining room. Ben was upstairs rearranging his Lego sets. And me? I was pacing the hallway like a man waiting for a bomb to drop. Because I knew Lena wouldn't take it quietly. I didn't hear from her until 3 hours later. One message. Just 2 words. How dare you? Then, nothing. No call. No visit. No begging. But the next morning, the real storm rolled in. She walked through the front door like it still belonged to her. Technically, it did, and stood in the middle of the living room like she expected me to apologize. Her face was pale. No makeup. A pair of sunglasses sat perched on her head like armor. I can't believe you would humiliate me like this, she said, voice shaking. You had me served. At work. I kept my voice steady. You stopped coming home, Lena. I had to start making decisions. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out for a second. She was stunned, I think, not by the divorce itself, but by the fact that I had taken the lead. That I hadn't asked for permission. That I didn't beg her to stay. She recovered quickly. This is about the money, isn't it? She snapped. You're trying to lock me out of the patent deals. Well, good luck with that. They were developed during our marriage. That makes them joint property. I tilted my head. You're sure you want to go that route? She glared. What's that supposed to mean? It means I documented everything. The work, the time logs, the original prototypes. They were mine before you ever walked into a marketing firm, Lena. And I've got the proof. For a second, I saw something flicker behind her eyes, doubt. But she didn't back off. I'll get a lawyer, she said, squaring her shoulders. And I'll fight for custody. You think you can just erase me from the kids' lives? That one stung. I didn't show it, but inside, it felt like a knife to the ribs. She hadn't been around. Not for the big things, not for the little ones. And now she was threatening to take them? I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just walked into the office, opened the drawer, and pulled out the file I had prepared. I handed it to her. What is this? Documentation, I said. From the last 8 months. She flipped it open. Saw the timestamps. The social media **TS. The school notes. One from Ellie's teacher. Ellie has been more withdrawn lately. She often asks if her mother will be at school events. When I ask if they've talked, she says no. She says Mom is always too busy for me. Lena's face changed. Her grip on the folder loosened and I saw something flicker, guilt, maybe, or realization. I leaned forward. This isn't about revenge. I'm not punishing you. But you walked away from this family before I ever filed those papers. All I did was put it on record. She didn't argue. Not right away. She just stood there silent. Then she said the quietest thing I'd ever heard come out of her mouth. I didn't think you'd do this. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I stared at her. I didn't want to. But you left first. You just forgot to pack your things. After that, things moved fast. Her lawyer filed a motion challenging the ownership of the patents and requesting temporary custody until things were sorted. Sarah was ready. She filed a response attaching all the documented neglect plus a motion for primary custody with supervised visitation. We didn't request child support. I didn't want her money. I just wanted stability for the kids. The court responded in our favor. A hearing was scheduled. Meanwhile, Lena was required to adhere to a visitation schedule, weekends only, with supervision at a neutral center. She was furious, of course. Called it vindictive. Claimed I was manipulating the narrative. But the court didn't see it that way. The evidence spoke for itself. Marcus, meanwhile, faced an internal audit after someone anonymously submitted records of misconduct, after-hours use of company resources, inappropriate expenses, and workplace fraternization. I didn't file the report directly. But I knew someone who did. A shareholder. One who wanted Marcus off the board. He was suspended pending investigation. Lena started cracking around the edges. She stopped posting on Instagram. Started missing meetings. Even the kids noticed. Ellie asked me, why does mommy look tired now? I didn't know how to answer. But one day, Lena showed up on time for a supervised visit. She brought coloring books for Ellie and a signed soccer ball for Ben. No heels. No makeup. Just jeans and a windbreaker. When she saw me across the parking lot, she didn't look angry. She looked lost. But it wasn't my job to find her anymore. I walked the kids in, gave them a hug, and stepped back. I wasn't doing this for me. Not anymore. Everything I'd done, filing, documenting, protecting, it was for them. For Ben. For Ellie. So they wouldn't grow up thinking love meant being ignored. That a parent was someone who showed up only when it was convenient. This was never about destroying Lena. It was about saving what she left behind. The custody hearing came and went like a storm I'd already braced for. Lena showed up in a modest coat, no designer bag, no heels, no dramatic makeup, just tired eyes and the weight of consequence on her shoulders. When the judge asked if she wanted to contest my request for primary custody, she paused, then softly said no. She admitted under oath that she had neglected the family, that her priorities had shifted and not in the way they should have. Her lawyer looked like he was expecting a fight, but she didn't give him one. Maybe she was too drained. Maybe for once she was being honest. The court granted me primary custody. Lena got generous visitation, but under supervision for the first 6 months. I didn't ask for more. I wasn't trying to erase her, I just wanted peace. And slowly it came. Ellie started humming again while she colored. Ben went outside more, he even joined a youth robotics league. I saw little pieces of them coming back to life. And with that, pieces of me came back too. I used part of the patent money to invest in the local school, new science labs, a scholarship fund for underprivileged kids, even a summer STEM camp. I wasn't trying to be some hometown hero. I just wanted to build something that mattered. Something stable. Something real. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving. I was rebuilding. A year later, Marcus had quietly taken a job overseas. Word was, it wasn't by choice. Lena, meanwhile, moved to a much smaller agency. Nothing glamorous. But she really showed up. She came to Ellie's school plays, Ben's soccer games. Sometimes she even stayed after to talk with the other parents. I stayed polite, distant, and civil. Forgiveness? No. But I'd stopped bleeding. That was enough. One night, the kids and I